You've probably seen this design go all over Pinterest, Instagram, whatever, and it's pretty cool. But how do people get this look and this effect for their clothing brand? I'm going to show you exactly how to go from A to Z with this design using today's sponsor, Kittle. Now, they currently have a Black Friday sale going on, but more on that later. Let's go ahead and get locked in. These are the settings for my artboard. I'm going to go ahead and press create and start designing. So we need a base for this design. So I went ahead and used Jesus portrait and airbrush isolated on a white background as my prompt. I'm using Nano Banana here and it's working perfectly fine. I'm just going through some options until I'm happy with the look that I want. And this one here came out perfect. To sell this collage effect, you need to cut out your image and it needs to be a little bit messy. Firstly, I went ahead and removed the background, used Kittle's AI removal background tool, and then I went ahead and used the pen tool here to go ahead and make a rough cutout of just basically the head, because that's really what we want here. Once I had my cutout ready, I went ahead and added a color fill, and I went ahead and used the pointer tool or the move tool, and then I right clicked on this and went ahead and used this as a mask. So basically you create this as a clipping mask and then you drag your image into that clipping mask, align it to your cutout, and once you're happy, you press enter on your keyboard, and now essentially you've made a clipping mask using Kittle. This is going to be an essential tool throughout this whole process, so ensure that you keep this in mind. So I need a duplicate of this image so I can go ahead and start using my collage. I'm going to go ahead and go through the clipping mask, grab a duplicate of this, and just go ahead and delete the mask so I can go ahead and make a new mask. Here's a more detailed breakdown on how to make a mask. So firstly, use the pen tool and generate the shape that you're going to use as a clipping mask. Once you're happy with your shape, I want you to go ahead and go to the color and add a color fill. Now I want you to go ahead and press enter so your object is now a solid shape. Right click and use as mask. Once this is activated, grab your image and drag it within that selected area, and then Kittle is going to recognize that as a mask, and then press enter. And once you've pressed entered, you're now ready to start editing your image because it's now used as a clipping mask. There's two ways about going and designing this. You could either do the realism way where you could just use found images of teeth, other eyeballs, and build a solid collage that way, or you can implement graphics like drawn graphics, found images, and other little details here and there to make it a little bit more personalized. And we're going to be doing a blend of both here. So I'm going to use a bunch of found images, use the clipping tool, and then I'm going to go ahead and add some drawn elements from Kittle to bring this all together. I'm going to show you guys one more demonstration of building this clipping mask. So I'm going to go ahead and use the pen tool and cut out this shape of a mouth. The more detail, kind of the better, depending on the sort of look that you want. If you want it to be kind of more realistic, add a bit more detail. If you want it to be more fun and playful, make sure your shape's a little bit more larger and more obvious, if you know what I mean. Next, add your color fill, right click once you're happy, and then press use as a mask. Once you use it as a mask, it will come up with these little striped lines that indicate that it's ready for you to add in an image. Drag your image in, and once your image is in, all you have to do is move it around until you're happy and then press enter. You can always go back and edit this mask because you can move around your image, but this is just a heads up on how to do it. Next, I'm going to go ahead and cut out all these images and then use them in my collage. I'm just going to skip through this process because it's very repetitive. Bam, now we have all the images cut out and in masks. And the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to go in with a pen tool and I'm going to go ahead and select the different corners that we used to build our original mask. The reason why is I want this to look like a cutout from a magazine, and having a fake paper effect is the perfect disguise for this. And the way I'm going to do it is just make that little cutout or make that little shape and then go ahead and use whatever color I want. I'm just going to go with pastel colors because they work really well with these sort of designs. Muted yellows, muted pinks, muted blues. And then once I'm happy, I'm going to go ahead and grab my image and I'm going to right click and bring it to front. Once I've brought it to front, I'm going to go ahead and align the corners so it looks a little bit messier than usual, but not too messy. And then once I'm happy, I'm going to repeat this step as well. Again, this design style is meant to be very repetitive because it's the same action steps over and over again, but doing them in the way that you want is probably the hard part, because obviously it looks really funny with his eyes closed and this random smile. But once you've brought it all together and you add in those effects like this fake paper effect, you know, getting your muted pinks with your outline, right clicking and bringing it to front and just aligning it differently, you start to see the image come together. But again, don't be too stressed on like, oh, this looks a bit funny or this looks a bit odd. I think that kind of sells the effect if it looks funny because it has a shock value, and that's what you really want in this design. I made sure to repeat the effect for the actual chain as well, and I also made sure to add in this cross just to fill some negative space. I feel like negative space is my enemy. I also made a duplicate of it and put it on the other side, right click and flipped it so it's a little bit more realistic in terms of its play. At first I was going to do a cutout thorn crown, but I just went ahead and hand drew one because I thought it would be a little bit more playful and add a bit more of a creative spin to the actual design. From the 24th of November to the 2nd of December, Kittl is giving you guys a Black Friday deal that you clearly don't want to miss out on. 25% off on a yearly pro plan or an expert plan. And I personally use expert. I used to be in pro. They're both great. This applies to current users, returning users, and new signups, so everybody can get it. You'll unlock the premium features, the AI tools that I'm using in this video clearly, and all the exclusive templates that Kittl has, and mine as well. It gives you access to fonts, assets, and vector editing, which I did in this whole video. Click the link in my bio and type in code BF2025. Itself, tying all the elements together and making it look a bit more cohesive. Now, Kittl has a lot of great assets, and I went ahead and typed in scribble and then marker because I wanted to find some sort of assets that I can put into this design that resemble some of the ones that we've seen on Pinterest and Instagram, so we don't have to go ahead and draw them. If you use those 3 dots, you can go ahead and look at the tags that they used to label these actual designs, and if you go through those tags, you find more designs, which I find very helpful, and I haven't seen anybody talk about it on a Kittl video before. I really like this eye asset here, and I felt like the best way to get rid of one of the eyes was just using the eraser brush, which I found was great. I tried to crop it, cropping wasn't working, so just use the eraser brush, go in with a big brush, remove one of the eyes, and then Kittl automatically reframes it for you. The eye really adds a lot here. It becomes a focal piece for the graphic, but it's not too busy. It like adds balance, if that kind of makes sense. Everything flows really well. We have a lot of elements going on here, but the muted colors and the new design elements that are added in, it helps it keep contained. Now we need a font to match this collage effect, and 60 display was the best font that I found there. I went ahead and made a duplicate in case I wanted to go back or add any slogan text. We're not going to be doing anything crazy here. I'm just going to go ahead and outline the text, double click, and just warp it to kind of shape the actual graphic. So I'm creating kind of like a loose arch here. Again, just to say, shape the main focus of this design and recenter the focus to the actual head. We're going to go ahead and move this to the side, and then we're going to grab our whole design here. I'm going to press Command G to make sure it's all grouped. Once it's all grouped, I can go ahead and rescale it just so it fits a little bit better on our board and our actual design board, so we can see on a t-shirt basically. Next, I'm going to go ahead and right click and send this font to the back. Again, you can kind of see what I meant by reshaping the design and making sure the face is the focus. The text is just there to recenter our eyes to the head. For the text, the only effect I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add a slight Gaussian blur to the outside of it, and you can do that just by going into the shadows panel. So if you click your actual font, go into the shadows, and you turn up this blur here, turn everything down, you get a sort of a Gaussian blur on the font, which looks pretty cool. Now the design is looking quite solid here, but we're missing a few elements to bring it all together and make everything look uniform, and that's going to be textures. And I'm going to be doing this 2 ways. I'm going to add a texture manually, and then I'm going to use the smart boards in Kittl to finalize the design. So I just added a pepper texture, so it's the 3rd one that you see. Next, I'm going to add a smart board here, and I'm going to type into the smart board, add a half tone texture to the actual graphic. And this is going to allow us to add 2 textures to our design without having to use any sort of weird overlays or anything like that, using natively within Kittl. So press generate, wait the 15 seconds via Nano Banana, and then once that's done, we're going to have a design that looks like this. The last video I did with Kittl was using these smart boards and how they can be useful for your design processing, whether that's adding things that you can do yourself, but you just want to do within a program that doesn't have it natively, so 2 textures. And I found that it was pretty amazing. Like, it turned out amazing, as you can see here. So that texture that I had, I'm going to go ahead and convert this into an image and then remove background. As you can see here, the blur that we added to the font is kind of confusing the AI tool that removes the background. And the best way to get around this is basically just use the actual image filters. So if you click your image and you go to photo filters here, you can go ahead and go to remove color, and then you can go ahead and use the eyedropper tool to select the color that you want to remove. In this case, it's white, which is going to be a little bit more difficult because it's going to select the highlights as well. So just finding that happy medium between removing enough color but not removing any design elements that you don't want to be disappeared. And then basically we have our design almost 100% complete. The last thing to do is to add in any mockups. And in my last video, I showed you guys how to generate this sort of mockup. Create a realistic flat lay mockup of a lightweight vintage style white t-shirt. The shirt should have light distressing around the collar, sleeves and hem to give it a worn in age look. It should have a slightly boxy fit, but be laid flat on a solid black background that has the distressed look, which is kind of trending right now of clothing brands. All you have to do now is put it all together and you have your designs complete. So what do I think of the final design? I give it a solid 9 out of 10. I actually really like how the design came out, especially using the boards to finalize any sort of effects that I wanted and keep it all together and make it a solid design. I really enjoy that. Anyway, I love you guys. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.